My daughter called me broke and useless and said her fiancé's family had replaced me. But when her wedding venue demanded the final $27,000 payment, they found out whose account they were really counting on. Her face when she realized the transfer was void, priceless. The room went silent so fast it felt like someone had hit mute on the world. 1 second, it was all noise and motion. The bridesmaids were talking over each other, half laughing, half complaining about hairpins and heels. The makeup artist was leaning in close to my daughter's face, blending something along her cheekbone. Someone's playlist hummed from a little Bluetooth speaker on the counter. The air was thick with hairspray and perfume and nervous excitement. Emma sat in front of the big lit mirror, shoulders back like she owned the room, holding a tube of lipstick up to her mouth to see the color. She had her head slightly tilted, trying to decide if the shade was too bold for the photos, lips parted as she smiled at her own reflection. Then the door swung open so hard it slammed into the stopper with a dull crack that made everyone jump. The sound cut through the chatter like a thunderclap. Every head turned toward the doorway. The wedding coordinator stood there, framed by the hallway light. She wasn't the polished, breezy professional I'd seen gliding around the venue all morning. Her face was pale beneath her makeup, her lips pressed together so tightly they were almost white. She still clutched her clipboard to her chest, not like a work tool now, but like a shield. Her eyes flicked around the room in a fast, jerky sweep, past the makeup artist frozen mid-stroke, past the curling iron still humming on the counter, past the open garment bags spilling out lace and satin, past the half-zipped bridesmaid gowns and jewelry boxes left open like little treasure chests. Then her gaze landed squarely on my daughter. "Emma," she said. Her voice was low but tight, like each word had to squeeze itself out of her throat. It sounded like it was taking everything she had not to yell or burst into tears. "I need to speak with you," she continued, "right now." It was like someone had hit pause on the whole room. The bridesmaid's hands stopped midair, one still holding a mascara wand, one gripping a hairbrush, another clutching the tiny clasp of a necklace she'd been trying to fasten. The little speaker on the vanity kept playing quietly, but nobody was listening anymore. Even Lorraine, my ex-wife, who'd been laughing too loudly at some story in the corner, went still. Her smile faltered and slid off her face as she turned. Someone's phone screen dimmed and went black in their hand because they'd stopped scrolling. "What's wrong?" Emma asked, her forehead wrinkling, annoyed more than worried. She turned halfway in her chair, lipstick still in hand. "Is it the flowers? Don't tell me they messed up the bouquets. I swear if they sent sunflowers instead of roses, I'm going to lose it." The coordinator swallowed. Her throat moved visibly. When she spoke again, her voice dropped into a strained whisper, the kind of whisper that still somehow fills the whole space. "It's not the flowers," she said. She took one small step into the room, as if crossing an invisible line. "It's the payment," she continued, "the final transfer of $27,000 for the venue and catering." For a heartbeat, nobody seemed to understand the words. They just hung in the air like smoke. My daughter's hand, still holding the lipstick, stopped mid-motion. "What about it?" she asked. There was a sharp edge under the confusion now. My fiancé's parents took care of everything. It should have gone through yesterday. The coordinator's grip on the clipboard tightened. Her knuckles were so white they almost matched the paper clamped under her fingers. She looked like she wanted to be anywhere else. "It bounced," she said finally. The word sounded too small for what it meant. "The transfer was voided by the account holder," she added, forcing herself to go on. "The payment was reversed, twice. The system shows, authorization revoked by sender." The air left the room like someone had opened a vacuum. You could almost feel the pressure change. The makeup artist's brush hovered a breath away from a bridesmaid's cheek and just stayed there. The bridesmaid who'd been wrestling with the zipper on her dress stopped halfway up, her hands frozen on the fabric. Another girl who'd been laughing a moment ago now sat completely still, mouth slightly open. Emma's face drained of color so quickly I could practically see it happening, like someone had pulled a plug inside her. Her carefully applied tan suddenly looked wrong, too warm on a face gone cold, like it had been painted onto a mannequin. "My... what?" she whispered. The lipstick trembled between her fingers. From where they sat, all Emma and the others could see was the coordinator and their own reflections in the mirror. But in the full-length glass mounted near the door, off to the side, there was another reflection. Mine. Behind them, in that tall mirror, you could see me standing in the hallway just outside the bridal suite, one hand resting lightly on the doorframe, the other holding my phone loosely at my side. I hadn't stepped all the way in yet. No one had invited me, but I was there, present, visible, if anyone cared to look. The father. The man they'd shuffled to table 12 in the back corner of the room, the one they'd planned to tuck quietly next to distant cousins and plus ones, out of the way, out of focus. One of the bridesmaids, seated closest to the door, turned her head first. Her eyes flicked from the coordinator to the mirror and then over her shoulder at the real doorway. She saw me. For a split second, her face ran through 3 emotions in fast sequence: surprise, recognition, then understanding. The kind of understanding that only comes from having heard some version of the story, that I was broke, embarrassing, old-fashioned, lucky to be allowed here at all. The kind of gossip that travels through group chats late at night before big events. Her eyes widened a little. She didn't smirk. She didn't look away. She just stared, like she wasn't sure which side she was supposed to stand on anymore. In that moment, I didn't feel embarrassed. I didn't feel small. I didn't feel like the poor relation sneaking through the back entrance of someone else's life. I felt very, very clear. All the noise from the hallway, the clinking of glasses at the bar, the muffled bass of whatever song the DJ was testing, the rumble of guests' voices, seemed to soften as the coordinator eased the door almost closed behind her. The outside world dulled, like someone had shut us into a bubble. I stepped forward just enough that Emma could see me directly, not just in the mirror, just enough that there was no plausible way she could pretend I wasn't there. Her eyes lifted and met mine. They were wide, shocked, but not yet fully connecting the dots. I let the silence stretch for one more beat. "Still think I'm broke and useless?" I asked. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't snap. I didn't shout. I spoke quietly, calm, even. So the sentence cut through the room like a blade. Emma's eyes locked on mine, as if glued there. For the first time that day, the confidence slipped from her face completely. Her mouth parted slightly, like she wanted to deny everything and couldn't find the words. The lipstick finally slid from her fingers. It rolled across the vanity in a slow, wobbling line, leaving a faint red smear against the white surface. Then it tipped over the edge and dropped to the floor with a tiny, almost polite thud that somehow sounded louder than all the music and noise outside. No one bent down to pick it up. Weeks earlier, if you'd asked me what I wanted more than anything for my daughter's wedding, the answer would have been simple. Not dramatic, not poetic, not grand, just one word. To see her happy, not impressed with me, not grateful to me, not proud of me. Just happy. I didn't want to be the center of the day. I didn't want speeches about what a great dad I was. I didn't need applause or recognition or even a front row seat. I just wanted the kid I raised, the one who used to run down the hallway at 6 years old with mismatched socks, the one who used to crawl into my lap during thunderstorms, the one I'd carried through years of scraped knees and bad grades and heartbreaks, to have her moment, her life, her joy. That was it. And I had been planning for that moment in the quietest, most invisible way a father could. I had been saving for 3 years. 3 years of pretending the old tires on my car were still fine, even though they squeaked like rubber on sandpaper every time I turned sharply. 3 years of repairing the same fading, outdated suit, the one with the barely noticeable tear beneath the armpit, instead of buying a new one, patching it up with tiny stitches I swear only I could see. 3 years of declining invitations to go out after work because I'm tired, when really I just couldn't justify spending an extra $20 on drinks knowing what I was trying to build. 3 years of late nights, taking extra shifts, saying yes to overtime, nodding through exhaustion because one more hour meant one more deposit into that quiet little corner of my finances. 3 years of walking past shop windows and seeing things I wanted, a decent winter coat, new boots, a TV that didn't make a buzzing sound when it warmed up, and telling myself, this is for Emma. This is so she doesn't have to worry. This is what fathers do. The savings account I'd created for her wedding had its own private nickname in the bank system, a little note only I would ever see when I logged in, for Emma's big day. It felt silly sometimes, dramatic, like something a character in a movie would type, but I liked seeing it. I liked imagining her future built piece by piece through that label. Every month, like clockwork, a portion of my paycheck slipped automatically into that account and stayed there, untouched, accumulating slowly but steadily like a quiet promise becoming real. And in my mind, in that private place I rarely admitted existed, I had imagined the moment I would tell her. I pictured us sitting at the small kitchen table in my apartment, the one with the slightly wobbly leg I kept meaning to fix. I pictured the 2 mismatched mugs I always used, one blue one with a chipped rim, one white one with a fading logo from a hardware store I hadn't visited in a decade. I pictured us sitting across from each other, steam rising from the tea I would make too hot because I always forget how strong my kettle is. I pictured myself clearing my throat in that awkward dad way, saying something like, "So, I've been putting something aside for you." and then telling her the number. $27,000. $27,000 I didn't truly have to spare, but had carved out of my life inch by inch. $27,000 representing every time I had put her needs above mine without hesitation. $27,000 I would never consider using for myself, not for a vacation, not for a new car, not for anything, because to me, nothing felt as important as giving her the wedding she dreamed of. In my imagination, she would look shocked at first, then touched, then maybe a little teary. I thought maybe she'd squeeze my hand or throw her arms around me or whisper something like, "Dad, I didn't expect this. You already do so much." I didn't need the reaction. I didn't crave the gratitude. I just liked imagining that moment where my effort, years of quiet sacrifices, would finally turn into something warm and real. But life rarely matches our fantasies. Instead of that quiet kitchen table moment, a few weeks before the wedding, I found myself standing in a narrow hallway of her new house, holding a cardboard box filled with old family photos and a set of wine glasses she didn't want anymore. I was waiting, politely, awkwardly, because she'd asked me to hang on a second while she finished talking to someone in the living room. I didn't want to intrude. I didn't want to eavesdrop. I was just stuck there, balancing that stupid box against my hip, shifting my weight from one foot to the other as I waited for her to call me in. And that was when I heard it. The insult that started everything didn't come with malice in her voice. It didn't come shouted. It didn't come heated. It didn't come from anger. It came like a secret. A soft one, a casual one. A thought she wasn't ashamed to say out loud. I heard her laugh, that bright, easy laugh she does when she's trying to impress someone. And then I heard her say, in a tone that sounded almost affectionate, "My dad can't afford anything. Your family is basically replacing him." Replacing me, like a faulty part in a machine. She kept laughing. Her fiancé laughed with her. His mother laughed, in that polite, tight-lipped way rich women do when they agree but don't want to say it themselves. They joked about my old car, my outdated suit, my simple apartment, my cheap life. Her fiancé's father chimed in, gently, as if trying not to be mean, suggesting maybe I'd be more comfortable at the relaxed table toward the back, with the cousins and friends. He said it like a kindness. She agreed. I stood there, still holding that box, the glassware clinking faintly inside as my hand shook, not from anger yet, but from humiliation so sharp it almost felt like nausea. She didn't even lower her voice. She didn't even think twice. She didn't even imagine I might be in earshot. It wasn't just an insult. It wasn't even about the words. It was the tone of someone who had already rewritten the story of who I was and erased me from the version of her life she wanted to present. The insult didn't sound like an insult at first. It sounded like the truth she believed. It sounded like a confidence she shared freely. It sounded like a secret I was never supposed to hear. Because to her it wasn't cruel, it was simply the way things were. And that was the moment. Standing in a hallway with a cardboard box and a set of wine glasses she didn't care about, when I felt something quiet snap inside me, not loud, not dramatic, just a soft, irreversible click. The moment the man who had saved for 3 years did something he had never done before. He reconsidered whether his daughter deserved the parachute she assumed he would always open under her, and that was when everything changed. It was a Saturday afternoon in early spring, the air outside still cold enough to bite, but the sun coming in through the windows like it was trying to pretend it was summer. Emma had invited me to her fiancé's family home so we could sort through some things she'd left at my place, and because the wedding planning will be going on all day, you might as well be here. I'd shown up early, carrying the box of photos and the glasses carefully, dressed in my best shirt. The blue one, she said, made my eyes look less tired. And the same old shoes I'd polished to an almost respectable shine. The fiancé's parents' house was big. Bigger than any place I'd ever lived in. White pillars, high ceilings, wide hallway lined with framed trips to Italy, France, places I'd only seen on TV. The floors were so shiny I hesitated to walk on them in case I left some kind of mark. "Just put Dad's stuff in the spare room," Emma had said earlier, waving vaguely toward the left side of the house. "We'll go through it later. Oh, and Dad? Try not to break anything, okay?" she'd added with a laugh. I'd laugh too, even though my chest stung. I found the spare room, set the box down on a chair, and turned to leave. In the hallway, I could hear voices from what sounded like the dining room, a hum of conversation, occasional laughter. I should have kept walking. Instead, a bit of Emma's voice floated out, clear and bright. "It's fine, seriously," she was saying. "My dad can't afford anything major. He's, you know." A pause, then a small snicker. "Your family's basically replacing him." A wave of laughter rolled through the room. Not cruel at first, more like polite amusement, the way people laugh when they've been given permission to. Someone, her future mother-in-law, I later realized, said, "Oh, honey, that's not very nice." But the tone wasn't offended. It was indulgent, like she was watching a child say something cheeky. Emma laughed harder. "Well, it's true," she insisted. "Have you seen his car? That thing looks like it survived 3 wars. And the suit he wants to wear? Please. I told him we'd get him something decent, but he said he'd just make do." More laughter. A man's voice joined in, her future father-in-law. "Well, we don't want him to feel completely out of place," he said. "But yes, we can elevate some things." "Exactly," Emma said. "Honestly, you have no idea how relieved I am that you're taking over the payments. I mean, can you imagine if he was in charge? We'd be getting married in a community hall with plastic chairs and a buffet from the supermarket." My stomach dropped. I stood there in the hallway, invisible, holding nothing, listening to my daughter describe my life like it was a joke. "He just doesn't get it," she went on. "He still lives like it's the 90s, saves every penny, drives that old thing, never goes anywhere. There's no way he could afford this venue, like zero. It's better this way. You get to do it right." Her fiancé chuckled softly. "He's doing his best," he said half-heartedly. "He's just from another world." The horrible part was that I might have forgiven the rest if someone had actually defended me, even a little. If someone had said, "He's trying," or "He's your father." Instead, the future mother-in-law added, "We'll make sure your special day is perfect, darling. Don't worry. We'll handle it. And of course your father will have a place. Maybe at the family table with the distant relatives. Or we can give him a nice seat a bit further back so he doesn't feel uncomfortable in the spotlight." "He'll be fine anywhere," Emma said, casual, dismissive. "Honestly, as long as he's there, he can sit wherever. We don't want him awkwardly hovering at the head table. He doesn't know how to talk to people like this. It's not his world, and I don't want him embarrassing me." That one sliced. A chair scraped back. A glass clinked. People moved on to napkin colors, seating charts, floral arrangements. I stood in the hallway, heart hammering, feeling like someone had taken the ground out from under me. I didn't barge into the room. I didn't throw the box of photos and shout, "I was saving for you, you ungrateful child." I didn't embarrass her in front of her future in-laws. I just stood there until I could breathe without shaking, then quietly turned and walked back toward the spare room. Inside, the box of photos sat open where I'd left it, old memories staring up at me. Emma at age 5 in a second-hand princess dress. Emma at 10 with missing teeth and an ice cream. Emma at 16 in a thrift store prom dress I'd altered by hand at 3 a.m. I closed the box. Something hardened in my chest. Not hatred, not even anger at the surface level. Deeper than that. A firmness I'd never allowed myself to feel when it came to her. I'd always been the dad who said yes, the one who bent, the one who swallowed pride and worked extra hours and told himself, "It's for Emma." Standing in that quiet room, holding the lid of that box, I knew one thing with absolute clarity. I wasn't going to be their wallet anymore. Not for this. Not for people who joked about replacing me. Not for a daughter who thought I was nothing more than a backup seating arrangement. The account held exactly $27,000. I checked it that night when I got home, sitting at my small kitchen table with a microwave dinner going cold in front of me. I pulled up the banking app and logged into the special savings sub-account I'd been feeding for 3 years. There it was, in plain black numbers. $27,000, 12 hours, every cent had a story. The extra shift I'd taken when my back hurt. The weekend I'd said no to a fishing trip because gas was too expensive. The times I'd put off buying new tires, hoping the old ones would last one more season. All of it had built this number. 3 days before, I had scheduled the transfer at the request of the venue, linked it to the final invoice, set the date, watched the confirmation pop up on my phone. I remembered the swell of relief I'd felt. She'll never know the stress behind this. She'll just have her day. Now I sat at the same table, phone in hand, hearing her voice echoing in my head. "My dad can't afford anything. Your family is replacing him." The urge to cancel the transfer rose up so fast it scared me. It felt mean, petty, like revenge. Then another thought followed. Why is protecting your own savings for your future mean, and insulting the person who's been sacrificing for you for years? Just joking. I opened the scheduled payments tab. The transfer sat there, highlighted to Silver Ridge Estate and Gardens, amount $27,000. Date, May 23rd. Status, scheduled. My thumb hovered over edit. I thought about calling Emma, telling her what I'd heard, giving her a chance to apologize. But another memory rose up. Her, at 15, rolling her eyes and saying, "You're too sensitive, Dad. It was just a joke." Then 20, saying, "You always make everything about your feelings." Then 24, shrugging off every time I tried to set a boundary with, "Why are you being so dramatic?" I realized that if I confronted her now, all that would happen was another performance. Tears, a half apology, a promise to be more careful with words. And then she'd ask for the money anyway. The bitterness wasn't just from the words she'd said in that dining room. It was from years of being quietly downgraded in her life while I quietly upgraded mine for her sake. I hit edit, then cancel. A warning popped up. "Are you sure you want to cancel this scheduled transfer?" My thumb shook. I paused, one last time, giving myself a quieter version of the ultimatum. If you hit no, you are agreeing to stay in the role they wrote for you, broke, useless, but still paying. If you hit yes, you may blow the top off this whole wedding, but you will finally be honest about what they're asking of you. I hit yes. The transfer vanished from the list. I sat there for a long time, phone on the table, hands empty. The next morning, I walked into my local branch in person and moved the money into a different account entirely, one labeled Emergency Fund, James Walker. The teller looked impressed when she saw the amount. "Saving for a house?" she asked kindly. "Or retirement?" "Neither," I said. "Just for whatever happens next." She nodded, typed some things, and pushed a printed confirmation toward me. I kept that slip folded in my wallet, behind my ID. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't call the venue. I didn't call my daughter. I didn't call the fiancé's family to warn them their assumption about his parents taking over the payments might be slightly off. I did nothing. I waited. On the day of the wedding, the venue looked like something out of a magazine. Silver Ridge Estate and Gardens sat on a low hill surrounded by vineyards, the main building all white columns and wide windows. Lanterns hung in the trees lining the path. Rows of white chairs had been set up on the lawn facing a flower-covered arch. Inside, chandeliers glowed above polished wooden floors and long tables draped in ivory linen. Everything about it screamed expensive, intentional, curated. You could smell money in the air, under the floral arrangements and perfume. I got there early, out of habit. I'd been guest, father, driver, occasional unpaid porter for years now. Showing up early felt like the least I could do, even if apparently my contribution began and ended with my presence. The parking lot was already filling with sleek cars, black sedans, glossy SUVs, one silver sports car with rims that cost more than my entire vehicle. I parked my old Corolla at the far edge of the lot, next to a maintenance truck, where it looked less out of place. My suit was my best, but it was still the same gray one I'd worn to 3 funerals and 2 job interviews. I'd had it pressed and my shoes shined, but cloth tells the truth. The seams were just starting to go at the cuffs. The lining rubbed a little under one arm. I caught my reflection in one of the venue's polished windows. Middle-aged man. Good posture out of habit. Lines around the eyes from squinting in the sun. Tie knotted carefully. Hair combed back with too cheap gel. I didn't look rich. I didn't look replaced either. I just looked like a dad. Inside, the venue staff were already moving with purpose, all black outfits and polite smiles. Someone handed me a small program with Emma and Daniel's names in scripted gold. The font was so fancy it took me a second to read it. "Where would you like me to sit?" I asked the woman at the table, my voice polite. She flipped through her chart, found my name, and hesitated. "Ah, Mr. Walker," she said. "You're at table 12, back right corner of the reception hall, near the windows, with—" She scanned again. "Some extended family members and a few +1s. It's a nice view," she added quickly, as if that made up for it. "Back corner. Away from the head table. Away from the groom's family. Away from the speeches and the center of the room. Away from where a father might usually sit." I nodded once. "Thank you." I'd expected it. It still stung. In the courtyard, I caught sight of the groom's parents arriving. His mother in a tailored dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent, clutching a designer handbag. His father in a perfectly fitted suit, cufflinks catching the light. They walked like they belonged there, like they were part of the architecture. They greeted guests with practiced warmth, laughing loudly, calling people by name. I watched them for a moment, then stepped aside, choosing a bench under one of the trees. I sat alone, watching as clusters of people filtered in. Old neighbors, Emma's friends, a few relatives I hadn't seen in years, who glanced at me and offered obligatory nods. Nobody asked where I was sitting. Nobody asked if I needed anything. I was a background character at my own daughter's wedding, But for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I had to chase center stage to justify my presence. I knew something nobody else did. Somewhere in a server log, there was a scheduled transfer that no longer existed. Somewhere in a ledger, a big X sat through a line that used to represent $27,000 of my blood and time. And somewhere in this building, an accounting system would soon realize there was a hole where money should be. I sipped the glass of water the staff had offered and watched the groom's family pose for photos like they owned the place. They smiled wide, perfectly at ease, unaware that the floor beneath their feet wasn't as solid as they thought. When it was time to be seated, I took my place at table 12. The other guests there were a mix of third cousins once removed and plus ones of Emma's old classmates. They chatted about the drive, about the weather, about the beauty of the venue. "That chandelier," a woman in a blue dress whispered near me. "Can you imagine what it cost?" I could. More than anything I'd ever spent in one place. I traced the rim of my water glass with a fingertip and watched. The ceremony started. Emma walked down the aisle in a dress that glowed under the sunlight. She was beautiful. My breath caught in my throat, despite everything. For a few minutes, I just saw my little girl taking big grown-up steps, eyes shining, her arm in her fiancé's, the world meeting in one carefully staged moment. When she reached the front, she didn't look my way. The officiant spoke. Vows were exchanged. Rings slid onto fingers. Applause burst forth like a wave. They were married. People clapped, cheered, wiped away tears. I clapped too, hands moving automatically, heart heavy and light at the same time. I could love her and still refuse to be her doormat. The contradiction sat inside me like a stone and a feather. The disaster didn't happen immediately. It started as a ripple. During the cocktail hour, servers moved around with trays of champagne and canapes. A string quartet played near the corner. Guests took photos against a backdrop of flowers and the estate's logo. Somewhere near the bar, I noticed a small cluster of staff talking in low, tense voices, one of them glancing repeatedly at a tablet. The wedding coordinator, the same woman who would later burst into the bridal suite, walked briskly toward the manager's office, her lips pressed into a hard line. The groom's mother floated past me with a high, delighted laugh. "Isn't this lovely?" she said to a friend. "When we do something, we do it properly. No cutting corners, only the best for our son." A server brushed by, murmuring apologies, clearly distracted. I watched them out of the corner of my eye. At table 12, one of the cousins complained that the bar didn't have his preferred brand of whiskey. Another guest wondered when the steak would be served. Behind the scenes, something was starting to crack. When they called everyone into the reception hall, the groom's family walked in first, soaking in the attention. Emma and Daniel were announced as Mr. and Mrs., to cheers and applause. The DJ hyped up the crowd. The head table glowed with candles and floral arrangements, towering centerpieces that reached almost to the chandelier. From my corner, I had a good view of everything. I saw the manager approach the coordinator, whisper something urgently. I saw both of them glance toward the head table, then toward the groom's parents. The coordinator's face had that tight look people get when they're trying to smile while their brain is on fire. There was a delay before dinner. People shifted in their seats. The quartet started playing again, quietly, to fill the silence. The staff kept moving, but slower, more cautious, like they were waiting for a verdict. I saw the moment the groom's mother realized something was wrong. She turned in her chair, brows furrowed, snapped her fingers at a passing server. "Excuse me," she said, loud enough that 3 nearby tables heard. "Why is nothing being served yet? We were promised champagne refills and appetizers. My husband is hungry and we have guests waiting." The server murmured something about a slight delay in the kitchen. Her lips tightened. "This is unacceptable," she said. "Find your manager, now." The server hurried away. The manager appeared a minute later, his face polite but strained. He approached the groom's parents with the practiced smile of a man whose job required him to deal with wealthy, difficult people. "I apologize for the delay," he began softly, bending toward them. "There seems to be a minor issue with the final payment." "A what?" The groom's father snapped, color rising in his face. "What do you mean, an issue? We paid weeks ago." The manager's voice was low, but fury has a way of carrying. "The initial deposit was paid, yes," he said. "However, the final transfer of $27,000 due yesterday was reversed by the sender. Our system shows the transaction as void. Authorization revoked. Twice. We attempted to run the backup card, and it declined as well." The groom's mother's eyes went wide. "That's impossible," she said. "We arranged everything. We transferred the money. This is your system's error." "It's not," the manager said. The polite tone was thinning. "We have documentation. I'm afraid we cannot begin dinner service without the payment completed. It's our policy." The groom turned in his seat, his face flushing, looking from his parents to the manager. "What's going on?" he asked, trying to keep his voice level. The manager hesitated, then said the line that cracked the night open. "Someone revoked the transfer. The account holder canceled the payment." The groom's mother's outrage grew louder. "This is ridiculous," she snarled. "We trusted her father to handle that part. He insisted. He said he wanted to do something for his daughter. If he couldn't afford it, he should have been honest. This is beyond embarrassing." Heads turned toward me like we were on stage and someone had suddenly spotlighted the villain. I stayed seated at table 12, spine straight, hands folded in my lap, my phone resting in front of me like any other piece of silverware. For once, I let the silence stretch. The staff started moving faster, but not to serve food. They were looking for someone. I could see it in the way they scanned the room, their eyes darting from face to face, the way one of them stopped near our table and asked, "Have you seen the bride's father, James Walker?" I raised my hand slightly. "That's me," I said. "Sir, the coordinator is looking for you," the server said, clearly uncomfortable. "She asked me to bring you to the bridal suite right away." I stood. Chairs shifted around me. A few of my distant relatives stared openly. One of them muttered, "What did you do now?" under his breath, a joke that might have been funny on any other day. I followed the server through the room. As I passed, I could feel eyes on my back. The hum of conversation dipped, then surged in little waves of speculation. In the hallway outside the bridal suite, the coordinator was pacing, her heels clicking on the polished floor. When she saw me, relief and tension warred in her expression. "Mr. Walker," she said, trying for a professional smile. "We need to talk." "I figured," I said. She took a breath, then lowered her voice. "The final payment for the venue and catering," she said carefully, "did not go through. The transfer was voided. The account that was supposed to send it—" "I know," I said. She blinked, thrown off. "You... no?" "I canceled it," I said plainly. Her mouth fell open a fraction. "Sir, I don't think you understand," she said quickly, panic rising. "Without that payment, we cannot legally proceed with the full reception. We can't serve the plated dinner. We can't keep the bar open. It's against our policy. The groom's family is furious. They said they were under the impression you were responsible for this payment." "I'm aware of what they were under the impression of," I replied. Behind her, through the slightly open door, I could see the bridal suite. Half-finished hairstyles, dresses, scattered shoes, the lingering smell of hairspray and perfume. "Please," the coordinator said, lowering her voice even more. "I don't know what happened, and it's not my business, but if there's any way to resolve this, if this is just a banking error—" "It's not an error," I said. "I just decided I'm no longer the designated parachute." And with that, I stepped past her and into the bridal suite. Inside, it was the same chaos as earlier, but with the volume turned up and the joy dialed way down. Emma stood near the vanity, veil pinned into her hair, lipstick perfect, eyes wild. Her friends hovered, unsure whether to touch her or back away. My ex-wife, Lorraine, paced near the window, phone in hand, talking to someone in frantic half-whispers. The moment I entered, the room seemed to tilt. Emma's eyes locked onto mine like lasers. "Dad," she said, her voice sharp with panic. "They're saying the payment for the venue didn't go through. They're saying the transfer was canceled. You sent it, right? Tell them it's a mistake." She took a step toward me like she could will the words out of my mouth. I didn't hurry. I moved to a clear space near the door, closed it gently behind me, and let my presence settle over the room. "Did they tell you why it didn't go through?" I asked. Her eyebrows shot up. "What does that matter? We're in the middle of my wedding, Dad. They can't just stop everything. Fix it." "Emma," Lorraine snapped, "don't talk to him like that. We need him. James, please, just call the bank and sort it out. Transfer whatever you need to. We'll figure it out later." The entitlement in her voice was so familiar, I almost didn't hear it at first. I looked at my daughter. "What did you tell Daniel's family about me?" I asked. Emma blinked. "What?" "In their dining room," I said. "A few weeks ago, when you thought I wasn't there." Color drained from her face faster than any makeup artist could fix. What are you talking about?" she stammered. "Why does that matter right now?" "It matters," I said calmly, "because you stood in their nice big house, surrounded by their nice things, and said, 'My dad can't afford anything. Your family is replacing him.' You laughed about my car, my suit, my cheap life, and you agreed I should sit at a back table with the distant cousins so I wouldn't embarrass you." The room went still around us. One of the bridesmaids looked down at the floor. Another stared at Emma in open shock. Lorraine froze, her phone halfway to her ear. Emma started, then caught herself. You were listening? You were spying on me? Not intentionally, I said. I was in the hallway. I heard my name. I heard you. I heard every word. Her mouth opened and closed like she was searching for the right script. It was a joke, she said finally, latching onto the easiest defense. We were just talking. You know how people talk? That doesn't mean anything. Why are you bringing that up today of all days? Because, I said, lifting my phone and tilting the screen, you were talking about the man who held the parachute while you jumped out of the plane and laughed at how heavy he looked. I swiped, brought up my banking app, and showed her the account snapshot. The $27,000 sitting under Emergency Fund James Walker. She stared at the number like it was in another language. I saved this for you, I said quietly. For 3 years. I was going to pay that invoice. I had scheduled it. Then I heard you say I was useless, that I was being replaced, that you were relieved I wasn't in charge, because I'd ruin everything with my poverty. So I canceled the transfer. Lorraine sputtered. You can't be serious. You did this out of spite? I did this out of self-respect, I corrected. I am not an open wallet you get to mock while you swipe. I'm your father. You don't get to erase me publicly and still cash in privately. Emma's eyes filled with tears, anger, and humiliation crashing into each other. You're ruining my wedding, she whispered. No, I said. I'm just refusing to pay for it. The door flew open so fast it hit the stopper again. The groom's mother stormed in, followed by his father. Both of them rumpled from indignation, not from dancing. What is going on in here? His mother demanded, ignoring everyone except me and Emma. They're telling us the payment bounced. The manager says the account holder canceled the transfer. You told us your father insisted on covering this part. She rounded on me. A real man doesn't humiliate his daughter on her wedding day. A real father pays. Ah, there it was. A lifetime of implied worth, condensed into one sentence. I looked at her slowly, then back at my daughter. Is that what you told them? I asked Emma quietly. That I insisted? Emma swallowed. I said you wanted to contribute, she said. I mean, you always said you'd help. I didn't think you'd just pull out. Or maybe, I said, you assumed I loved you enough to accept any level of disrespect as long as you got your perfect day. Her fiancé, Daniel, hovered just behind his parents, face pale, jaw tight. He'd always been polite to me, but a little distant, as if he didn't quite know what to do with a man who fixed his own car. Sir, he said, stepping forward, trying to sound reasonable. Whatever misunderstanding there was, can we just sort it out later? The venue needs payment now. If you do this, if you make a scene... I haven't raised my voice once, I interrupted. If there's a scene, it's because you all built this entire event on money that was never yours to command. You assumed it was a given, a right, something you could spend and then insult, all in one breath. The groom's father puffed up, anger overriding caution. You're being dramatic, he said. If you couldn't afford this, you should have said so. Instead, you're playing some petty game on the day of your daughter's wedding. This is childish. A real man doesn't let his daughter's in-laws talk about replacing him while they quietly expect him to pay the bill, I finished. He stared at me, thrown by the fact that I'd spoken over him. I unlocked my phone, swiped to the voice recorder app, and tapped one file. The room filled with the sound of Emma's voice in the dining room weeks earlier. My dad can't afford anything major. He's, your family's basically replacing him. The laughter, the follow-up lines, the jokes, the part about my car, about the community hall and plastic chairs. Every word played out in the bridal suite like a soundtrack from a movie nobody thought I'd see. When the recording ended, the silence was deafening. Emma's hands shook. Her mascara stayed eerily perfect, but everything underneath it was cracked. You recorded me? She whispered, scandalized. I made a record so I wouldn't talk myself out of what I knew I heard, I said, because I've spent years giving you the benefit of the doubt, years believing you didn't mean it, and it was just a joke and you were just stressed. Years paying for everything behind the scenes while you rolled your eyes at my shoes. The groom's mother shook her head, incredulous. Even if she said those things, she said, that doesn't justify ruining an entire wedding. Adults handle conflict privately. They don't sabotage events like teenagers throwing tantrums. Adults, I said lightly, also don't use money to buy obedience and call it love. I scrolled on my phone, tapped once, and held the screen up so they could see the line in my app. Account. Emergency Fund. James Walker. Purpose. Personal emergency only. Access revoked from third parties. I reserved these funds for emergencies, I said. A medical crisis, a job loss, something catastrophic. Not for a group of people who think my existence is an embarrassment, but my savings are a utility. Emma stepped closer, eyes shining. Dad, please, she said, voice cracking for the first time. Please, don't do this. Just pay it. We can talk about it later. Yell at me after. But if you don't pay, they're not going to serve dinner. They're going to shut down the bar. Everyone will know. I'll never live this down. Her hands, the same hands that used to grip my fingers when crossing the street, were now clenched into fists at her sides. The bridesmaids looked at me with varying expressions. Sympathy, judgment, fear. Lorraine watched like the whole scene was happening through glass, detached and frantic at the same time. Emma, I said softly, do you understand what you're asking me to do? I'm asking you to be my dad, she said, like you always said you would be. You always promised you'd be there for me. I am here, I replied. But being here doesn't mean I have to fund disrespect. You're twisting it, she cried. It was stupid, okay? I shouldn't have said those things. I was nervous, and they were joking, and I just went along with it. Does that mean I deserve this? For once, I said, you're feeling the real-world consequence of your words. You treated me like a backup prop, a sentimental accessory. You planned a wedding you couldn't afford, assuming I would quietly fill the gap. You didn't ask, you didn't check, you just counted on me. Daniel's voice finally broke in, frustration cracking his polite facade. So that's it? He snapped. You're just, what? Walking away? Over some overheard conversation? You're going to let all our guests sit out there with nothing because your feelings got hurt? I looked at him. My feelings, I said, have been hurt for years. I ignored it. I swallowed it. I shrugged off your family's comments about proper lifestyles and real success. I let you all assume I was irrelevant as long as the money came through. Today is the first time I've done something with that hurt other than bleed quietly. The groom's father made a disgusted sound. This is pathetic, he said. A man's duty is to take care of his family. You raised her. You do not pull support at the 11th hour. No, I said. A man's duty is to also take care of himself, to not let his daughter's wedding become the final nail in the coffin of his dignity. Emma's shoulders shook. Tears finally slipped past her lashes, tracking down flawless foundation. Dad, she said, almost whispering now, if you walk out, everyone will blame me. They'll say I misled them. They'll say I couldn't manage my own wedding. They'll say I'm a fool. They'll say the truth, I said gently, that you built a house on sand and then sneered at the rock you thought you didn't need. Her breathing turned shallow. So that's it then, she said. You'd rather watch everything burn than... What? Be embarrassed? I stepped closer, just enough that I didn't tower over her, but stood at eye level. No, I said. I'd rather let one event burn than spend the rest of my life being treated like a fire extinguisher you only remember when something's on fire. The fiancé's mother threw up her hands. This is pointless, she snapped. We'll put it on our card. We'll fix it. We always do. And after today we are done depending on him for anything. Do you hear me, Emma? This is what happens when you trust people like this. People like this. The phrase hung in the air like smoke. By all means, I said, stepping back toward the door. If you have the card, the credit, the means, pay it. Take full ownership, financial and otherwise. That's what you've wanted from the beginning, isn't it? The truth shimmered just beneath the surface. They'd expected me to pay precisely because it meant they didn't have to stretch their own comfort. Their wealth had limits. My sacrifices apparently did not. The coordinator appeared in the doorway again, knocking timidly on the frame. I'm sorry to interrupt, she said, looking faintly ill, but the manager needs a decision. Either the payment is made now, or we have to modify the event. Finger foods only. Cash bar, no plated dinner. Shock ran through the room like a live wire. How cheap, the groom's mother whispered, horrified. How fitting, I replied. Emma let out a low, strangled sound. Dad, she whispered, please, please don't do this to me. I looked at her for a long time, at the dress, the veil, the careful lashes and the trembling mouth and the desperate eyes that, for a second, looked like the little girl who used to cling to my hand in crowded supermarkets. I stepped close enough that only she could clearly hear me, though the others would catch fragments. You can't insult the person holding the parachute, I said softly, and still expect them to catch you when you jump? We held each other's gaze, both of us knowing this was the split in the road. Then I straightened. You all have choices to make, I said quietly, looking at the groom's parents, at Daniel, at Lorraine. You can scale back, pay for what you can afford, own the outcome. Or you can rage at me and pretend this is all because of one man's decision instead of years of your own. I turned toward the door. Where are you going? Lorraine demanded, panic sharpening her voice. James, don't you dare walk out, not now. I paused with my hand on the doorknob. Lorraine, I said without turning, I have spent the better part of my adult life walking into rooms to fix things for you. Today, I am finally walking out. Then I opened the door and stepped into the hallway. Behind me, chaos erupted. Raised voices, accusations, the coordinator's pleading tones, the groom's father swearing, Emma breaking into full sobs. I walked down the corridor slowly, past framed photos of other happy couples who'd probably never had this exact disaster, though I like to imagine I wasn't the first father to finally say no. In the main hall, guests noticed me leaving. A few turned in their chairs, confused. One of my cousins stood halfway, as if to stop me, then sat back down when he saw my face. I walked past table 12, past the head table, past the bar where the staff stood frozen in uncertainty. At the entrance, the manager caught my eye. He looked stressed, but not hostile, more like someone who'd seen enough family drama to know not to pick sides. I'm sorry for the trouble, he said quietly. So am I replied, but not sorry enough to fix it. Outside, the air was cool and sharp against my skin. I walked slowly to my car, feeling every step like a small release. At the edge of the gravel, I glanced back once. Through the big windows of the reception hall, I could see people standing now, not sitting, some gesturing angrily, a cluster of guests near the bar, the groom's father on his phone, no doubt arguing with a bank or snapping at some poor customer service rep. Lorraine near the door, one hand pressed to her forehead. Emma nowhere in sight. I unlocked the Corolla, slid in, and closed the door. The outside noise dampened to a soft murmur. For a few seconds, I just sat there, hands on the steering wheel, watching my breath fog in the cool air. My phone buzzed almost immediately. Emma. Dad. What are you doing? Come back. We can talk about this. Everyone is waiting. Another text, a missed call. I didn't answer. I started the car, pulled out of the parking lot, and joined the road back into town. That night, my apartment was quiet. No music, no arguing, no clinking glasses. Just the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional car passing outside. I made myself a simple dinner. Pasta with the cheap sauce I always bought on sale. I sat at my chipped table and ate it slowly, the familiarity of it grounding me after a day that felt like a strange, bright fever dream. The $27,000 was still there in my account. It was surreal, knowing that number now represented my future instead of someone else's party. It could mean a better car, a contribution to a modest home someday, a cushion if my job went sideways, a safety net that didn't depend on someone else's approval, or it could just sit there for now. A quiet statement. My life matters too. After dinner, I moved to the small couch by the window, the one I'd almost thrown out once to make room for a bigger TV I never bought. The view was nothing special, just a strip of sky, some rooftops, a distant glimpse of trees, but the sunset painted everything with warm gold and soft pink. My phone buzzed on the coffee table. First, it was Lorraine. How could you do this? You humiliated all of us. People are asking questions. I had to lie and say there was a banking error. I can't believe you. I read it. Archived it. Then more messages. Unknown number. This is Daniel's father. Just so you know, you have permanently damaged your relationship with your daughter. She is devastated, all because of your fragile ego. Archive. Emma. I can't believe you left. They had to switch to some reduced menu. People are talking. Daniel is furious. His parents are blaming me. Do you feel better now? I stared at that for a while. Another came, shorter. I know I said things I shouldn't have. But this is cruel. Then, later, after what I imagined was the end of the reception, one more. Dad. The day is over. It wasn't what I planned. Everyone's mad. I'm sitting in my dress on the floor of a hotel room and I feel like my life just exploded. I'm sorry for what I said. I was stupid. I was showing off. Please talk to me. My thumb hovered over the screen. I could picture her. Mascara smudged now. Hair a little wilted. The dress pooled around her like a spilled cloud. Phone in her hands. Waiting for the man she'd called useless to fix one more thing. I loved her. That didn't mean I had to answer. I thought about what talking tonight would look like. Raw emotions, defensive words, a whirlpool of blame and guilt. She'd beg. I'd soften. I'd say something like, "We'll figure it out." And just like that, the firm line I'd drawn would blur. I leaned back on the couch and watched the last streaks of sunlight fade from the sky. The room grew dim, then properly dark. The glow from my phone screen, the only light. The message sat there, waiting. Dad, I'm sorry. Please talk to me. I thought about all the times I'd jumped up at the first ring, all the nights I'd picked up at 1 a.m., all the mornings I'd driven across town because something went wrong and they didn't know what to do. I thought about the 3 years of savings I'd silently poured into an account that had nearly become a tribute to people who didn't see me. I thought about my own heart, raw, but finally being treated like it mattered. Then, slowly, deliberately, I pressed the button on the side of my phone. The screen went black. The buzzing stopped. Outside, the last hint of sunset gave way to night. I sat there in the quiet, not triumphant, not gloating, just still. For the first time in a very long time, the silence around me felt like something I'd chosen. Tomorrow, maybe, there would be conversations, maybe new boundaries, maybe nothing at all. But tonight, one thing was finally irrevocably true. I was no longer the invisible bank behind someone else's dream. And if that meant the world they'd built on my back shook a little, so be it.